Hey there, welcome back to Story Slices, where we slice through the best Reddit tales just for you. Let's dive right into the first story. The first one is the Tittle story, and it starts like this. I never thought I'd be one of those people writing a long post about neighborhood drama, but here I am. This is the story of how my homeowner association tried to destroy my beloved garden, and how I fought back. Buckle up, folks, because this is a wild ride. First, let me introduce myself. I'm Sarah, a 35-year-old software developer living in a quiet suburban neighborhood in Colorado. I've always been passionate about gardening, and when I bought my house 5 years ago, one of the main selling points was the spacious backyard. It was perfect for creating the garden of my dreams. Over the years, I transformed that plain patch of grass into a vibrant oasis. I'm talking raised beds full of vegetables, a small orchard with apple and cherry trees, and beautiful flower beds that attract butterflies and hummingbirds. It was my slice of paradise, and I spent countless hours tending to it. Everything was great until about 6 months ago when our homeowners association board got some new members. That's when the trouble started. It began with a letter in my mailbox. I remember coming home from work one day in early spring, excited to check on my newly planted tomato seedlings. As I grabbed the mail, I noticed an official-looking envelope from the homeowners association. I didn't think much of it at first, probably just another reminder about lawn maintenance or some new community event. Boy, was I wrong? I opened the letter as I walked into my kitchen, and my jaw dropped as I read its contents. The homeowners association was claiming that a significant portion of my backyard, including most of my garden, was actually community property. They were demanding that I remove all my plants and structures within 30 days to restore the area to its original state. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. My garden wasn't just a hobby, it was a part of me. The thought of tearing it all down made me sick to my stomach. I immediately called my neighbor and good friend, Lisa. "Have you seen this?" I asked as soon as she picked up, my voice shaking. "Seen what?" Lisa sounded confused. "The letter from the homeowners association. They're saying part of my backyard is community property. They want me to tear down my garden." "What? That's insane," Lisa exclaimed. "How can they do that?" "I don't know, but I'm not going down without a fight," I said, determination replacing my initial shock. Lisa offered her support, and we agreed to meet the next day to go over the letter in detail and figure out my next steps. That night, I barely slept. I tossed and turned, my mind racing with questions. How could they claim my property wasn't mine? What gave them the right? And most importantly, how was I going to fight this? The next morning, I called in sick to work. This was too important to put off. Lisa came over early, armed with coffee and bagels. We spread out the homeowners association documents, property maps, and my home purchase paperwork on the dining room table. "Okay, let's start from the beginning," Lisa said, taking a sip of her coffee. "What exactly does the letter say?" I read it out loud. "Dear Ms. Thompson, it has come to our attention that you have made unauthorized modifications to community property adjacent to your residence at 1234 Maple Street. The area in question, measuring approximately 30 feet by 50 feet at the rear of your property line, is designated common space according to the Homeowners Association bylaws. We require that you remove all personal plantings, structures, and modifications from this area within 30 days of this notice. Failure to comply may result in fines and legal action. Sincerely, Robert Johnson, Homeowners Association President." Lisa frowned. "That doesn't make any sense. I've been to your house 100 times, and I've never seen any indication that part of your backyard isn't yours." "Exactly," I exclaimed. "I've been living here for 5 years, paying property taxes on my entire lot. How can they suddenly claim it's not mine?" We pored over my property documents, comparing them to the Homeowners Association's claim. According to my deed and the survey done when I bought the house, the entire backyard was part of my property. There was no mention of any community space. "This has to be a mistake," Lisa said, shaking her head. "Maybe the new board members misread something?" I wasn't so sure. "I don't know, Lisa. This feels deliberate somehow." Just then, my phone buzzed with a text from another neighbor, Mike. "Hey Sarah, you get that crazy letter from the Homeowners Association too?" My heart sank. It wasn't just me. I called Mike immediately, and he filled me in. Apparently, several homeowners on our street had received similar letters, all claiming parts of their backyards were suddenly community property. "This is nuts," Mike said. "They're saying half my kids' playground is on community land. We've had that thing for years." We agreed to meet that evening to discuss our options. In the meantime, I decided to do some digging into our Homeowners Association board. A quick search online revealed that Robert Johnson, the new Homeowners Association president, was a real estate developer. He'd moved into the neighborhood less than a year ago and quickly maneuvered his way onto the board. The pieces were starting to fall into place, and I didn't like the picture they were forming. That evening, a group of affected homeowners gathered in my living room. The atmosphere was tense as we shared our stories and compared letters. "They're trying to take my rose garden," Mrs. Chen, a retired teacher, said tearfully. "I've been tending those bushes for decades." Mike nodded sympathetically. "And they want me to tear down my kid's treehouse. It's been there since before we even moved in." As we talked, a pattern emerged. All of the affected properties were on the perimeter of the neighborhood, backing up to a strip of undeveloped land. "I bet that scumbag Johnson wants to develop that land, Tom," another neighbor growled. "And he's trying to grab parts of our properties to make it bigger." The more we discussed it, the more Tom's theory made sense. But how could we prove it? And more importantly, how could we stop it? "We need a lawyer," I said finally. "Someone who specializes in property law and dealing with homeowners associations." Everyone agreed, and we decided to pool our resources to hire an attorney. Lisa, bless her heart, knew someone who might be able to help. "My cousin Mark is a real estate lawyer," she said. "He's dealt with homeowners association disputes before. I'll give him a call tomorrow." As everyone left that night, I felt a mix of emotions. I was angry at the homeowners association's audacity, scared of potentially losing my garden, but also hopeful. We weren't going to take this lying down. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. Lisa's cousin Mark agreed to take our case, and we had our first meeting with him at his office downtown. Mark listened intently as we explained the situation, his brow furrowed in concentration. When we finished, he leaned back in his chair and let out a low whistle. "Well, I've seen some shady homeowners association behavior in my time, but this takes the cake," he said. "The good news is, based on what you've told me and the documents you've provided, their claim doesn't have a legal leg to stand on." A collective sigh of relief went through the room. "However," Mark continued, holding up a hand, "that doesn't mean this will be easy. Homeowners associations can be notoriously stubborn, and if there's a developer involved, they might have deep pockets to fight this." "So what do we do?" I asked, leaning forward. Mark outlined our strategy. First, we'd send a formal response to the HOA Association, refuting their claim and providing evidence of our property boundaries. If they persisted, we'd be prepared to take legal action. In the meantime, Mark advised, document everything. Take photos of your properties, gather any communications you've had with the Homeowners Association, and keep records of any interactions going forward. We left Mark's office feeling more confident but knew we had a long battle ahead of us. Over the next week, we prepared our response to the Homeowners Association. Mark helped us draft a strongly worded letter, citing relevant property laws and pointing out the discrepancies between their claims and our official property documents. We also did some more digging into Robert Johnson and his potential plans for the neighborhood. Tom, who worked in city planning, managed to get his hands on some interesting information. "Look at this," Tom said, spreading out a large map on my dining room table one evening. "These are the latest zoning plans for our area. See this strip of land behind our properties?" We all leaned in to look. "It's currently zoned as a greenbelt, but there's a proposal to change it to mixed-use development. And guess who submitted the proposal?" Tom's finger traced a line to the bottom of the document. "Horizon Development Corporation, that's Johnson's company." The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place. Johnson wasn't just trying to grab our land, he was planning a major development project. Armed with this information, we decided to take our fight public. We created a neighborhood Facebook group to keep everyone informed, started a petition against the Homeowners Association's actions, and even reached out to local news stations. The response was overwhelming. Other neighbors who hadn't been directly affected were outraged on our behalf. The story caught the attention of a local news channel, and before I knew it, I was being interviewed in my backyard. "This garden represents years of hard work and love," I told the reporter, gesturing to my flourishing vegetable beds. "The idea that someone could just come in and destroy it based on false claims is heartbreaking." The story aired that evening, and suddenly our quiet neighborhood dispute was the talk of the town. My phone was buzzing nonstop with messages of support from friends, co-workers, and even strangers. But the Homeowners Association wasn't backing down. A few days after the news story aired, they responded to our letter. They were sticking to their guns, insisting that the property boundaries had been misrepresented in our original purchase agreements. "This is ridiculous," I fumed, pacing my living room after reading their response. "They're basically accusing us of not knowing where our own property lines are." Mark, our lawyer, wasn't surprised. "This is a common tactic," he explained. "They're hoping you'll get frustrated and give up, but we're not going to let that happen." He advised us to stand our ground and continue with our plan. The next step was to file a formal complaint with the state's real estate commission and prepare for potential legal action. As we geared up for a legal battle, life in the neighborhood became increasingly tense. Robert Johnson and his supporters on the Homeowners Association board started holding their own meetings, spreading misinformation about our group's actions. One afternoon, I was out in my garden, trying to find some peace among my plants, when I heard a commotion at the front of my house. I walked around to find Johnson and two other Homeowners Association board members arguing with Lisa on my front lawn. "What's going on here?" I demanded, stepping between Lisa and the men. Johnson, a tall man with slicked back hair and an expensive-looking suit, turned to me with a forced smile. "Ah, Ms. Thompson, we were just explaining to your friend here that your continued defiance of Homeowners Association rules could result in significant fines." I felt my blood boil. "Defiance? You mean protecting my rightful property from your baseless claims?" Johnson's smile faltered for a moment before he regained his composure. Now, there's no need for hostility. We're simply trying to enforce the rules that everyone agreed to when they moved into this community. Rules that you seem to have made up out of thin air, Lisa shot back. Johnson's eyes narrowed. I'd be careful if I were you. Interfering in homeowners association business could have consequences. The threat was thinly veiled, and it took everything in me not to lose my cool. Are you threatening us, Mr. Johnson? Because that sounds an awful lot like harassment. He held up his hands in a placating gesture. No threats, just a friendly warning. It would be a shame if this misunderstanding were to escalate further. With that, he and his cronies turned and left, leaving Lisa and me fuming on the lawn. Can you believe the nerve of that guy? Lisa exclaimed once they were out of earshot. I shook my head, still processing what had just happened. We need to document this. It could be useful if we end up in court. We immediately called Mark and filled him in on the confrontation. He was concerned but not surprised. This is good, he said. It shows they're getting desperate. But be careful. Document everything. And if you ever feel threatened, don't hesitate to call the police. The next few weeks were a blur of legal preparations, community meetings, and increasing tension in the neighborhood. Johnson and his supporters became more aggressive in their tactics, sending out daily notices about alleged violations and threatening fines. But we stood our ground. Our group grew stronger, with more neighbors joining our cause as they realized the full extent of what the Homeowners Association was trying to do. Then, about a month after this all began, we got our first real break. It was a Saturday morning, and I was having coffee with Lisa on my back porch, enjoying the early summer sunshine and the sight of my thriving garden. My phone buzzed with a text from Tom, emergency meeting. My place, SASAP. Lisa and I rushed over, finding several of our neighbors already gathered in Tom's living room. Tom was practically bouncing with excitement. You're not going to believe this, he said, waving a stack of papers. Remember how I work in city planning? Well, I was going through some old files for an unrelated project, and I found something interesting. He spread the papers out on the coffee table. They were property maps of our neighborhood, dated about 30 years ago, long before any of us had moved in. Look at this, Tom said, pointing to a section of the map. See these lot lines? They're exactly where we've been saying they are. There's no mention of any community property in the areas they're claiming. We all leaned in, studying the maps. He was right. The property lines clearly showed that our backyards were part of our individual lots, not community property. But that's not all, Tom continued, his voice rising with excitement. I did some digging into the history of our Homeowners Association. Turns out, about 15 years ago, there was a proposal to create a community green space in that undeveloped area behind our properties. But it was voted down by the homeowners at the time. So how does that help us? Mrs. Chen asked. Tom grinned. Because I found the minutes from that meeting. The vote to reject the community space proposal explicitly stated that the existing property lines would remain unchanged. In other words, there's documented proof that our backyards have always been our private property. The room erupted in cheers. This was exactly the kind of evidence we needed to shut down the Homeowners Association's claims once and for all. We immediately called Mark and arranged to meet him first thing Monday morning. When we showed him what we'd found, he was ecstatic. This is gold, he said, poring over the documents. With this, we can not only refute their claims, but potentially sue them for harassment and attempting to deprive you of your property rights. Mark wasted no time in putting together a comprehensive legal response. He filed an injunction to prevent the Homeowners Association from taking any action against our properties, and prepared a lawsuit against the Homeowners Association Board for their actions. The day Mark served the Homeowners Association Board with our lawsuit was one I'll never forget. I was in my garden, ironically enough, when I saw Johnson and the other board members being handed the legal documents. Johnson's face turned an impressive shade of red as he read through the papers. He looked up, caught my eye, and for a moment I thought he might storm over. But instead, he turned on his heel and marched away, the other board members trailing behind him like dejected puppies. The next few days were tense. We half expected some kind of retaliation, but instead, there was just silence. No more threatening letters. No more confrontations. It was almost eerie. Then, about a week after we'd served them with the lawsuit, we received a letter from the Homeowners Association's lawyer. They wanted to meet to discuss a settlement. Our group gathered at Mark's office for the meeting. Johnson and the other board members were there, looking far less confident than they had in our previous encounters. Their lawyer, a nervous-looking man in an ill-fitting suit, cleared his throat. In light of the evidence you've presented, my clients are willing to withdraw their claims regarding the property boundaries. A ripple of excitement went through our group, but Mark held up a hand, silencing us. Go on, he said coolly. The lawyer fidgeted. Furthermore, they're prepared to offer compensation for any distress caused and to cover your legal fees. Mark leaned back in his chair, a small smile playing on his lips. That's a start, but I think we all know that doesn't cover the full extent of what's happened here. We're not just talking about a simple misunderstanding. Your clients attempted to unlawfully seize private property, harassed homeowners, and caused significant emotional distress, not to mention the potential damage to property values this situation has caused. Johnson, who had been sitting silently with a scowl on his face, suddenly burst out, "This is ridiculous. We were acting in the best interests of the community." Mark raised an eyebrow. Were you? Or were you acting in the best interests of Horizon Development Corp? The color drained from Johnson's face. "I don't know what you're talking about," he mumbled, but it was clear he'd been caught off guard. Mark turned back to the Homeowners Association's lawyer. "Here's what we're proposing. In addition to withdrawing all claims on our clients' properties and covering legal fees, we want a formal apology issued to all affected homeowners, to be distributed to the entire neighborhood. We also want the current Homeowners Association board to resign, effective immediately, and for a new election to be held under the supervision of a neutral third party." The lawyer started to protest, but Mark wasn't finished. "Furthermore, we want a legally binding agreement that any future changes to property lines or community spaces must be approved by a supermajority of homeowners, let's say 75%, a transparent voting process. And finally, we want Mr. Johnson to disclose any and all plans he or his company have for development in or around our neighborhood." The room was silent for a moment. Then Johnson exploded. "This is outrageous. You can't force me to disclose private business matters." Mark remained calm. "Mr. Johnson, may I remind you that you're currently serving as the president of our Homeowners Association? If you have plans that could impact our neighborhood, you have a fiduciary duty to disclose that information. Unless, of course, you'd prefer we continue this discussion in court, where we'd be happy to subpoena those records." Johnson deflated visibly, slumping in his chair. His lawyer leaned over and whispered something to him. After a heated but hushed discussion, Johnson nodded reluctantly. The lawyer turned back to us. "We'll need some time to review your proposals with our clients, but I believe we may be able to come to an agreement along these lines." Mark nodded. "Take all the time you need. But be aware, every day this isn't resolved is another day our clients suffer damages. I'm sure you understand the implications." As we left the meeting, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. For the first time in months, I allowed myself to believe that this nightmare might actually be coming to an end. Over the next week, there was a flurry of legal back and forth as we hammered out the details of the agreement. Finally, we reached a settlement that met all of our demands. The day the settlement was finalized, our neighborhood held a massive block party to celebrate. The atmosphere was jubilant as people mingled, sharing stories of the ordeal we'd been through and expressing relief that it was finally over. As I stood in my backyard, surrounded by the garden I'd fought so hard to protect, I felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Not just because we'd won, but because we'd come together as a community to stand up against injustice. Lisa came up beside me, handing me a glass of champagne. "To victory," she said, clinking her glass against mine. I smiled. "To community," I replied. In the weeks that followed, things slowly returned to normal in our neighborhood. The Homeowners Association board resigned as agreed, and we held new elections. This time, we made sure to elect people who truly had the community's best interests at heart. Johnson, unsurprisingly, put his house up for sale shortly after the settlement. I can't say I was sad to see him go. As for his development plans, once they were forced into the open, they were quickly shot down by the city council, thanks in large part to the outcry from our newly energized community. The whole experience taught me a lot about the importance of knowing your rights, about the power of community, and about standing up for what's right, even when it seems like the odds are stacked against you. My garden, which had been at the center of this whole ordeal, flourished that summer like never before. Every tomato I harvested, every flower that bloomed, felt like a small victory, a reminder of what we'd fought for and won. As I reflect on everything that happened, I realize that in trying to destroy my garden, the Homeowners Association had inadvertently helped create something far more beautiful and enduring, a strong, united neighborhood that looks out for each other. And that, I think, is the best kind of growth a community can hope for. Epilogue. It's been a year since our battle with the Homeowners Association, and I'm happy to report that things in our neighborhood have never been better. The new Homeowners Association board, elected after Johnson and his cronies resigned, has been transparent and fair in all their dealings. We've implemented new bylaws to prevent anything like this from happening again, including the requirement for a 75% vote on any major changes to our community. My garden has become something of a neighborhood attraction. I've started hosting gardening workshops for kids and adults alike, teaching them about sustainable practices and the joy of growing your own food. It's become a true community space, but one that respects individual property rights. Lisa and I have become even closer through this ordeal. We often joke about writing a book about our experience, the garden battle, how we fought City Hall and won. Who knows? Maybe someday we will. As for Johnson and his development plans, they've become cautionary tales in our community. We've learned to be vigilant about who we elect to positions of power, and to always question decisions that don't seem to benefit the community as a whole. The lawsuit settlement included a substantial sum for damages, which we used to create a community fund. We've used it to improve our local park, start a neighborhood watch program, and even set up a legal defense fund in case we ever need to fight for our rights again. Looking back, I'm amazed at how much has changed in just a year. What started as a threat to my beloved garden turned into a catalyst for positive change in our entire community. It wasn't easy, and there were times when I wanted to give up, but I'm so glad we persevered. To anyone out there facing a similar battle, whether it's with an homeowners association or any other entity trying to infringe on your rights, I say this: don't give up. Know your rights, gather your evidence, and most importantly, rally your community. Together, you're stronger than you know. As for me, I'm looking forward to many more years of peaceful gardening, secure in the knowledge that my little slice of paradise is safe, thanks to the power of community and the importance of standing up for what's right. And who knows, maybe next year I'll finally win that Best Garden Award at the county fair. After all, this garden has already proven it can withstand anything, even an overzealous homeowners association with a bulldozer. Are you hungry for more slices of stories? Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell to never miss out on any videos. See you tomorrow at Story Slices.